If you've taken the brave first step of starting your own business, I bet you've had that vision of what happens if my company hits the big time. I mean, so big that investors start calling and like you get to sell part of your business. Like, oh my gosh, isn't that the American dream? Well, today we are going to do a unique show because we have an entrepreneur on the show and the partner that helped her scale. We'll hear all about Becky's Blissful Bakery and how it hit the big time. Welcome into Idea Collective Live. It's the official weekly meeting of small business owners everywhere. I'm your host, Pat Miller, the Idea Coach. Big thanks, of course, to our sponsors that make this show possible: Bank 59, Quick Trip, Serendipity Labs, and of course, the Idea Collective collaboration community for small business owners. Welcome to all of our members who are on the call today. Now, this show is interactive. If you have questions or comments or sarcastic remarks for me or our panelists, of course, those are welcome in the chat, and we will work those questions into the show as we do our thing. And then after our interview, we'll hang out right here for the Quick Trip networking after party so we can meet and greet the panelists or other folks that are on the call. Hopefully you can make some new connections and some new friends today. So we have two guests today, the founder and the partner. The founder is Rebecca Scarberry, the founder of Becky's Blissful Bakery, and Mark Maglio, director of San Marc Holdings. Well, welcome, Rebecca and Mark. How are you? And can you please introduce yourself so everybody knows who's who? Because it'll be tough to tell you two apart.
Hi, thank you for having us. My name is Rebecca Scarberry. I am the founder of Becky's Blissful Bakery.
And I'm Mark Maglio. I am fortunate enough to be Becky's partner, director of San Marc Holdings, and a member of the Maglio family. We've been in the food business here in Milwaukee for about 5 generations now.
It's great. And it's great to have you both here. And Mark, I'd be remiss to say Maglio, not Maglio. I apologize.
You would be the first.
I know. I apologize for that. But Becky, let's go all the way back to the beginning. How did this whole thing start? I mean, where did a caramel company come from? And just go back to the beginning. Tell us what the dream was.
Okay, well, the dream was being a stay-at-home mom, and I was at the time. And I had walked into Good Harvest Market, which is a little organic grocery store over in Waukesha, Pewaukee area. And the manager asked me what I was trying to make. I was looking for a specific organic ingredient. And I told him, and he said, wow, that sounds great. I'd love to try them. We don't have any organic caramels at the shop. I'm like, okay, perfect. So went home, made him a batch of caramels, brought him back in. He said, those are amazing. I want to sell them in my store. So I had to figure out how to start a business. So that's kind of the first part of how the business started. So I was new to Wisconsin, had only been here a handful of years. My son was still a toddler, pretty much went with me for this entire entrepreneurial journey. So found a kitchen to get licensed in and contacted the Department of Agriculture and got licensed in a kitchen of a girlfriend of mine that I met at church, actually. So that's kind of where the whole business came from.
Now, I want to ask you more questions about how it scaled and all that kind of stuff, but I do want to stop for a second. You're driving away from the store after the guy says, I want to sell them in my store. What was that like? How did you feel when he said that?
Well, he hadn't tried them yet. Or are you talking about when he actually did try them? So
yeah.
It was interesting because, of course, I was flattered. And I was thinking, I need to Google how to start a business. So, yeah, it was a fun time. It really was. It was really a fun time.
That's cool. So when you started, when did you first start to think, hey, I might have something here. This might have legs. It might be going places.
It wasn't until later on. So for myself, starting the business, it was wonderful as a stay-at-home mom to be able to get out and get to know people and get to know the community a bit more. Again, not being from Wisconsin. So that part was really fun. Unfortunately, I got separated from my husband at the time and found my first job in Wisconsin. And then 3 days after my divorce was final, I lost that job. So I kind of found myself in a situation that you're laughing and crying at the same time because, I had never anticipated I would be in that situation. I still remember I got in my Honda Odyssey minivan and was driving, and it was raining. And I remember I was on the phone with my mom, and I was laughing and crying at the same time. And she's like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "I have no idea where I'm at, and I have no idea where I'm going." So that kind of gave me the opportunity to hit the ground running, so to speak. I was unemployed 2009, started doing farmers markets, started getting into local grocery stores, started getting a little bit of press locally, and then went back to work full time, I would say beginning of 2010. So at that point, I started having conversations with larger companies like Whole Foods Market and Williams Sonoma. So it was the challenge of balancing work and being a mom and starting a business that now had some legs.
And it's starting to get those conversations, the things that are like, what? Whole Foods? What? Oh my gosh, this is like Williams Sonoma. Are you kidding me? So those little things are starting to happen. But let's look at how the business elevated. Like, what kind of lessons did you learn early on about running a business? You said you had to Google it. We were all there at one point. So what were you learning early on as the business started to blossom?
So early on at the startup phase, I think what I learned is I had this conception that churches or schools, you could just go and ask to rent their kitchen by the hour and they would let you, right? Like that's what you do when you live in a community, you help the community out. It wasn't that easy to find a kitchen to be licensed in. And then figuring out what type of license I needed, and actually figuring out I needed to call the Department of Agriculture. So not knowing before you know, and of course, not having any experience in the food industry and not being from Wisconsin, it took a lot of calling and asking a lot of questions.
Did you ever get into a situation where what looked like good business wasn't good business? Not every deal was a good deal. Did that ever happen?
Couple handful of times. Yes, absolutely. So I guess early on, scaling the business, not getting into 200 and 300 grocery store chains, or a grocery store that has 200 and 300 units. That probably isn't a really good decision if you don't have a plan in place for something like that. That would be a good example. Partnering with the wrong people, that would be another good example of mistakes. I mean, I actually have a really long list of mistakes. I don't know how long we have today, but I mean, you let me know when you want me to stop.
Listen, this is a room full of entrepreneurs. It's a community full of small business owners, and we are curious to learn from the experiences you had. And hopefully we can help lift each other up. So this is a casual space to share what you're willing to share. And we're grateful to have you both on the show. If you're just joining us, we're talking with Mark Maglio from San Marc Holdings, and of course, Rebecca Scarberry from Becky's Blissful Bakery. We're talking about how it scaled all the way up and what they learned along the way. So when you started to grow, Rebecca, like, how did you find the resources to keep going? Because making a deal is great, but then you got to fulfill the deal, and that takes cash, right? How did you continue to grow?
Yeah, so early on, because I started the business during the time that I did, 2009, global economic crisis, there were not too many banks that were handing out loans to people that, wanted to sell candy. I think I got the response of, "Oh, that's cute." So honestly, I did what most entrepreneurs did, and it was the resources closest to me, friends, family, and in our own community, the Wisconsin Women's Business Initiative Corporation. So I've been a client of WBIC since 2009, and they were the only one at the time that would give me a loan for my initial build out in my third facility. So it was that and selling my Honda Odyssey minivan that afforded that build out. So and knowing like it's always gonna cost more money, right? Whatever you think it's going to be, just double it. You might as well triple it. So the first build out I did, I think the DNR got involved, and then you're dealing with other people's schedules, and sometimes they only meet once a month. So having things, not in your control, so to speak.
So if I'm hearing you right, similar to many of us, family, friends. Wibbick got involved, which is great. And did I hear you right that you sold your van to help
I
fund
did.
some of the build out?
Yeah.
What was that like to sell your car?
Well, it's a funny story, actually. So, you talk about one of those mistakes. This was another one of those mistakes. So, I bought a used Saturn, and I thought Saturns are reliable cars. It's fine. And I still remember my son at the time. He's like, "Mom," he loved that van because it had like the two screens that went down. I had a Lazy Susan in the middle of it. It was amazing. So to go from that to the Saturn was not a fun experience, especially when it broke down on me 13 times in 11 months. So throw that into doing a build out for your business and trying to cash flow everything as you go. So luckily, my son was only with me one of those times when it broke down, and I actually gained a lot of tow truck drivers as customers. There's always that silver lining.
That's that silver lining. That's right. Now, one thing that's curious about what you do is the caramels had to be made. How long did you make them yourself? And then when did you start outsourcing them? And what was that like?
So early on, my goal was to start getting equipment, right? Because I did everything over the stove by hand. So I believe it was my first year in business that I had hired my first employee. Without the proper equipment, we had gotten to, during our busy season, because it is a seasonal business, I had upwards of 12 people hand cutting and wrapping and cooking caramels. So it was quite a process. Yeah. Also, what I learned through that process is, I'm not great at managing people. I really don't like managing people. I don't really like being the boss. Let's just say that. I love making caramels. I love making people happy. I love telling stories, but not a great manager.
I love this. I mean, the business is so successful, but you're being so transparent, Rebecca. I really appreciate that because many of us in the audience can really relate with what you're saying. So thank you for sharing. So Mark, let's turn to you. So while Becky was initially trying to scale the business, San Marc didn't exist, but the parent company did, right? Can you tell us the backstory on San Marc and how it came to be?
Sure. So my great grandfather, Italian immigrant, had a push cart in which he sold the day's freshest produce. My great grandfather had a van. My grandfather had a warehouse. My dad had a little bigger warehouse, and now my spoiled youngest brother and my dad have 3 locations. So I had, similar to Becky, as far as 2009 being a tough year to graduate college with a finance degree, got a slap of reality that the job market wasn't what it used to be. So I went to work for Compass Group, which was a terrific opportunity for me to go see the other side of food. I had worked for my dad and with my brothers since I was 8 years old, sorting cherry tomatoes and driving around the state of Wisconsin and looking at farms and things like that. So I always had a knack for the food industry. So in 2016, when I mentioned to my dad that maybe it was time for me to move back from Boston and get into the family business, he kind of looked at the company and where the resources were and said, knowing your personality, it's just not a great fit right now. There's not the right opportunity, but there is a lot of need for what we could bring to the table in the state of Wisconsin. Great food manufacturers, great people, but this is a really tough time for people to scale their food business as regulation is picking up. So San Marc Holdings was born over the course of a few conversations in my 600 square foot apartment in Boston. And in June, I moved back to meet this lady, Rebecca, who had a great caramel.
And was Rebecca client 1 of San Marc? Is it that how it started?
Correct. Yeah. So my father has been very fortunate as far as mentors and people who've guided him and given him advice along the way and resources to help propel the business and to help him avoid making some mistakes. And he looked at this as an opportunity when he was introduced to Becky to say, well, she's got a great product and a great company. Let me just take a look at it and see what's there. And obviously with Rebecca, there's a great personality and a great mind and an innovator and a personality, but the opportunity to look at bringing manufacturing back in-house was a great one for both the P&L as well as Rebecca's time and energy being focused in the right arenas. So that led us to some conversations with Rebecca, and about 200 yards to my south, we went and signed our deal on June 1st.
That's crazy. So I want to dig in on that a little bit. So you already have a deal, so we're not talking out of school here, but I'm curious from the investor side, what were some of those things that you saw in Becky's business that made you guys go, this is a good deal? You mentioned her great personality and she's got proof of concept, but what else went into it from your side of the fence to have that be client one for San Marc?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we understood to be very important was that the product and the business were only as good as the people behind it and the care that they put into the product and putting the customer first. It was very clear that almost to fault, Rebecca had put the customer first for many, many years. We didn't look at this as an opportunity to make a ton of money or really a way to try to take control of a company. We know that we're not creative marketing guys, we're operators and finance people, and Rebecca had the authenticity and had the recipes and had the sense of community and had the team. She just needed someone, like she said, to help manage all of that. So really our opportunity to come in the same way that Rebecca was choosing to help the community by putting on a great product, and that would eventually lead to a great business, we thought we could do the same thing, and we could interject some of our resources to help Rebecca to then help the business do more of what it should be able to do.
Now, that makes sense from your side, but Becky, I want to go back to you. So you're there, you're making caramels, you're scaling, and then here comes Mark. So how did you get introduced to Mark, and what were your thoughts initially of, wow, I could bring a partner on? What was that like?
So his father had a lot to do with it. Mark and I actually were business partners prior to us even meeting, I believe. So I think we had finalized the deal, at least the details of the deal. So again, I have a laundry list of mistakes that I made. Another mistake I made was thinking high level. This makes sense for my business because I had lost touch of all of the different accounts and all of the different customers I had. And there's so much when you start scaling to manage and keep your arms around, so to speak. And we had product in 35 different states. I had mailed caramels to China. We were selling in, Hawaii and you name it. So there was a lot going on. And so I thought high level, I can do sales and marketing. I just don't want to manage all the people and the cash flow of sourcing the ingredients. And then I can't tell you how many times there was a specific product that got, I got a pallet of the wrong product. So then with all these orders and I don't have the right ingredients. So I literally would drive around to grocery stores trying to buy everything. So sourcing ingredients, managing people, managing product, all of that, again, going back to, okay, let's think high level, keep it simple. I'll outsource the manufacturing, I'll run the business, do sales and marketing, and that makes perfect sense. So that was one of the steps I took with my business that I learned a lot during that time. So I'll let Mark kind of explain that process, but it was after I had made that decision through a company, not a company, an organization called Fab Wisconsin, which is Food and Beverage Wisconsin. I had met Sam and said, I would love to get your advice on a situation I just got myself into. And we went to lunch and that's where the conversation started.
Do you want to elaborate on that, Mark? She said that you might have a perspective on what went down.
Yeah, I think when we were developing our model, one thing that we understood was that manufacturing and the actual care and the ingredients and the process that goes into, especially in the food world, making your product is the single most important thing you can do. You could have the best seller in the world, you could have the most attractive marketing, but if the product at its core is not what it should be and what the customer is actually looking for, then you might get one sale, but you're never going to have anybody come back. So I think in looking at what we could offer that true partnership. It wasn't an investment. It wasn't a loan. It wasn't a shot in the dark and hoping that it was going to work. We took a very thorough look at the business and really wanted to ingrain ourselves and become like family, like part of the Becky's team and the Becky's family, because that's what we operate as. It's, board decisions between San Marc Holdings are Dad and I giving each other an elbow over the do something or not. So that's just the level of trust that we have in each other. And I think we very quickly got there with Rebecca.
Now, I want to ask the same question to both of you, and hopefully you won't have the same answers because this could be fun. So, Mark, from your side of the fence, when did you know that this was going to work, that this was a good fit, that you're like, we made a good decision? Do you remember a time early on where you're like, yes, we did the right thing?
I think one of the things that we have always said is that we want to be able to tie our bow ties with the accountants, and we want to be able to grease the tires with the truck drivers. And when, as Becky mentioned, in the seasonality of our product, we were looking at 200 orders to get out the door for Williams-Sonoma. And Rebecca's sitting in the back cooking caramel at 8 o'clock on a Wednesday night. And I'm sitting in the other room packaging up as quickly as we could get them out. Stopped and looked at and said, regardless of where the money is or where it's being spent or who's doing what, this is a team that's going to pull together to do the right thing for the customer. And by doing the right thing for the customer, we're going to do the right thing for the business. And I think I was sort of looking through the window into the production room and seeing Rebecca stirring caramel and seeing it on the table, and I was there packaging, and Dad stopped by to make sure everything was going okay, brought us dinner. I think that was really when I knew that this partnership was going to work, because it really was a partnership with everyone pulling in this direction.
That's brilliant. How about you, Becky? Do you remember a time when you thought, okay, this is the right decision and I'm going to be good?
I think it was early on. He went to go pick up my son for me. So, I mean, that's family, right? Like, yeah. I think to what Mark said, there is, as you probably can contest to this as well, there's something special about being an entrepreneur and being a small business owner, because they're the ones that will work nights and weekends and be stirring a pot of caramel at 8 o'clock at night if that's what needs to happen, or picking up your business partner's son if that's what needs to happen. It's not you stay in your lane, this is what you do. We both have our strengths and our weaknesses, but overall it's okay, we know where we're going and we're gonna get there together. So it's a great dynamic and partnership. And I think that most people who have never worked in a small business or started a business or are small business owners, there's a personality trait that runs through entrepreneurs.
If someone works in corporate their whole life and they hear someone, get a little tight in their chest when they say my business partner picked up my kid, like small business owners, this is a lifestyle and that kind of stuff matters. And like someone might not get it if they're not on this journey with all of us, but I can absolutely understand how much that would mean. And that's terrific. I'm glad that things have worked out and you two have such a great partnership, and it's been great, right? Just like peas and carrots, like you've never fought, no problems at all, like no conflicts, everything's good. Is that right?
We have a rule within the organization, not this one, but the family business, the produce business. You $5 for every minute late that you are to a meeting, and that's why Becky's broke. So, so it was probably our first big sales meeting, and we were going to drive down to Chicago. We were supposed to meet at this table at 6:45, and at 6:52 she walked in the door, and I said, "I know you didn't have a partner or anyone to hold you accountable, but if we agree we're leaving at 6:45, we get in the car and we leave at 6:45. You're here at 6:44, so you can get your stuff together and we're out the door at 6:45. Does that make sense? Yes. Does that seem fair? Yes. Okay, so we'll never do this again, right? Try not to." And then she was quiet. And I said, "Well, we need to get you back. We need Becky back." So I'm not mad, but if this is going to work, we need to have this level of transparency. And I think, so peas and carrots, yes, because even if one of us is upset with the other, it's 30 seconds and you have now level set the relationship to punctuality is important to my partner. Got it. I won't be late. And she, in the same sentence, said, "Hey, you spoke to me like a jerk. I would appreciate it if you said it this way instead." Got it. Feelings. I'm not used to those. I'm bald mid. So a very good balance, but there are ups and downs, but you learn each other's communication style and what matters to them. And that's where the partnership really I think holds true, but you might disagree about peas and carrots.
No, absolutely 100%. And everything he said is true.
Yeah, it happens. Well, we want to talk a little bit about the business, where it is, where it's going as we wrap up here, but we do have some questions from the crowd that I'd love to ask you if you're okay with it. Megan's curious, and this is probably good for Becky. What is the thing you wish you would have or could have delegated first?
Accounting.
Yes, that's a great one because yes, accounting is really, really important. And early on, I wanted to be hands off of the accounting. And so we had a lot of bookkeepers or different accountants that came in, and everyone had a different way of keeping the books, so to speak.
Wow.
Be in the middle of it and to be doing, to think, well, the most important thing is getting product out, which
Right.
it is, because then you're totally doing what's right for the business and the customer. But the business still needs to make sure that that invoice went with that order and that you had your ingredients coming. And so I think in looking at that opportunity to remove some stress, yes, in the short term, it's challenging to hand that off, but to understand the numbers and to make sure that the business is going to keep running in the background while the real work is happening, I think is a great opportunity, because then you can also have someone analyzing. Very rarely does a solopreneur have the opportunity to not only do their numbers, do them on time, and analyze them so it can make decisions. Doing the numbers alone is step one, and that can often fall by the wayside. So
I agree with that.
Yeah.
You might not be able to see it right now, but Megan actually owns and operates an accounting service for small business owners. So she's doing a dance. I'm sure she's very.
$22, Megan.
That's right. That's right. Send that right over. Another question from Ariel. She says, I've received many warnings about partnerships. I'm curious what the challenge or concerns were with engaging in a partnership. What did you have to compromise on or let go, and what made that worth it? So maybe some of the things you were concerned about when the partnership began and you either had to compromise or let go. And Becky, it'd probably be best to start with you there. Does anything come to mind there about the things you were nervous about going into the partnership?
You know, I think the one thing that is the most important, and each business owner is going to have, you know, those important items that are going to be a little bit different, is basic values and basic set of daily lifestyle and living and how you treat others, not only family members, but your community as a whole and yourself. So I think that trying to align yourself with someone who's really good at selling something or really good at manufacturing, but those other parts of the puzzle doesn't fit, I don't believe it's going to be a good partnership. I think truly, and I look at Mark as family. He's like a brother to me at this, but you have to look at your partnership, if you are deciding to do this for all the right reasons, as a marriage. And can you live through the, you know, past the honeymoon phase? Because it takes both sides. It takes a lot of work.
Yeah, I can imagine. And Mark, Becky was client one. So was there anything going into client one's relationship that you thought you were going to stand firm on and you had to compromise on that maybe you haven't covered already?
I think one of the challenges anytime you're working with an entrepreneur is that they have always been in charge. And being in charge of a family business, you've also always been in charge. So my boss was always sitting at the kitchen table with me. I lived in the Compass group that I had a few bosses, but I think to understand at least a clear delineation of, from a duty perspective, who is going to do what? It might not always be in that same lane, but if it's okay, you're going to take these calls today because I'm in the kitchen, great, but I expect those calls to be done just like I would expect you to want me to get all the product made. So I think if nothing else, it was developing that communication that would really allow for accountability going both ways. Because so many entrepreneurs, luckily Rebecca had been sort of through the ringer, ups and downs already, so she had seen a lot of this already, whereas others in that startup phase just think it's all great and it's all going to work. She had a little bit more reality to her, but that accountability of, no, if this is what we're working on, we're going to do it. We're going to do it together. That was the biggest development that we needed to make, that I think has helped us as we've grown the organization.
That's great. And thank you for that. Thank you both for that, for sharing it, because those are real things that we all feel. So let's zoom out for a second. When you entered the partnership, you were here and now you're here. Where is the company now? How has the partnership grown the business? Because if someone's running their small business, they're thinking about bringing on a partner and trying to escalate where it goes. What has your success looked like? And I don't need proprietary data, but we're curious, like, how has it grown and where has it gone?
Sure. So when we looked at Becky's Blissful Bakery, it was at a co-packer. Rebecca essentially officed out of her kind of home, kind of car, and in between the co-packer and there. So we have since built out about 3,500 square feet of dedicated facility to Becky's Blissful Bakery. Sales have increased year over year between 10 and 500%, depending on the year. We have seen significant gains in the cost of goods, in that we have been able to bring that manufacturing back in-house. So the costs have come drastically down, and we've really been able to take, I think this is the most important part. I've been talking a lot. Cut me off. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We've been able to take a long-term view at the business, and not trying to make the right decision for next month's P&L or next month's cash flow. I think one of the important things that I've learned from my dad is you do what's right for the business and for the product and for the people, and the money will follow. And if it doesn't, you'll figure something else out, because we've got that mentality behind us. We have been able to make decisions for the long term of the business that have allowed it to continue growing. You know, different months, different periods, better or worse than others. But we're at a point now where, in discussions with Rebecca, we realized that Becky's Blissful Bakery is actually a really fun, cool, innovative caramel company. So it's no longer time to be Becky's Blissful Bakery. Let's make this a national scalable brand with some new fun marketing behind it. So that growth and doing the right thing for the business has allowed us the time and the focus to be able to pursue a rebrand. So we'll be launching with a new exciting brand in the coming months here.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, Becky, I'm curious from your standpoint, have you hit any marks that just make you sit back and go, oh my, I can't believe, like, I'm the end cap of this one store, or I got an order from China, or like things that make you just like pinch yourself. I can't believe that this happened. Has anything like that happened to you since you two have been working together?
Yeah, it has. I mean, the thrill of starting a business, it's thrilling. But I think the reality of, I would like to say I'm just an exceptionally smart person, and I found Sam Maglio to partner with me. I think I was just really lucky, and I was at the right place at the right time. So to have such an incredible family and business, and to be partnered with them, and like Mark said, he gets to sit at the table with his dad and talk about, product and doing the right thing. So I partnered with a family that is fifth generation in the food industry. I had no experience in the food industry, but it's not something that he just says, we do the right thing. They actually do the right thing. I mean, they didn't have to partner with Becky's Blissful Bakery and share all those resources. And I truly feel like I'm part of their family, and that's how they've treated me, good and bad, which is what you want, right?
Yeah.
So
You're like
I
the
think
spoiled oldest sister. Yeah, the favorite.
I think that there's a lot of people that started a business around the same time I did, and unfortunately, most of the people who started during that time, they're not still in business. So I actually am so blessed and so lucky that I'm able to still see what we created and have grown, and I don't have to have that entire burden, because there's a lot that comes along with having a business. There's a great burden. So now I have the opportunity to sleep at night and, have a day job and not worry too much. And I feel very, very lucky to be where I'm at today.
Well, and seeing that success story is inspiring for all of us. And I know that one thing that maybe some small business owners might think is selling the business is kind of like admitting defeat. Can you relate with that? What would you say to someone that's kind of feeling that way if they're considering bringing on an investor or selling?
So I would say that's silly. because think of it as the next chapter, right? So this one business, this one time doesn't define you. You think of, and from myself and my personal experiences, negotiating contracts with Williams-Sonoma in a parking lot of the church that I got my son baptized, or figuring out how to build a pallet and what a pallet configuration is. I mean, you think of those things that you learn throughout starting and growing a business that you didn't know before. But I think one of the greatest enjoyments I have being where I'm at now is the relationships, right? So every piece of the business and all the people that came and went over the years that all came together to, help grow the business or be customers of Becky's Blissful Bakery. Those are personal friends of mine today. And all of those experiences and all of those lessons, I still have those. I still get to, use those experiences to help other people now. So, my focus right now in life, and again, we all have seasons of life, is being able to help others, taking care of my health, and being happy. And I'm really lucky that I didn't have to completely walk away from my business to be able to enjoy this next season of life for myself.
That's fantastic, and it's inspirational. So I'll ask one more question for both of you. Mark, I'll ask you first. That way, Becky, you can think about it for a second. So Mark, from your perspective, if you're talking to a small business owner that's on the call right now, and they're thinking about scaling their business, what's one piece of advice that you would share to us as we consider scaling our small business?
I would say that one thing that has always worked for us, and that's really the only frame of reference that I can look at it from, but doing what's right for the product and for the consumer is going to lead you to the best decision. Mm-hmm. And that might mean staying up until midnight and packing orders, or that might mean understanding that you're not going to be your best self if you're still sitting there at midnight packing orders, and you're going to get home and you're not going to be the father or the brother or the son that you need to be, because you're going to be in a bad place. So understanding and taking this holistic approach and looking at your business as, like Becky said, a cycle of life, and making the right choice for the product mm-hmm. and for the consumer is going to drive you to the right end decisions. And whether that's taking on a partner or taking out a loan to go get a piece of equipment, or saying, well, this is a hell of a ride, but I want to sleep at night. Those are all equally good options. The only bad option is continuing to do something that's not giving you joy. And I think doing what's right for the product and the customer is going to always bring you joy.
That's a great answer. Thank you for that. How about you, Becky? Any thoughts or advice that you would give to someone that's thinking about scaling?
Yeah, truly know where you're going and why you want to get there. So if you want to scale your business, what does that look like? Define what that looks like. Have an end goal. So you have something to work towards, and it's not just, I want world domination. I want everyone to be eating caramels because I was there. Having a plan, working the plan, as San Maglio likes to have. So I think that going back to what is driving you, what do you want to accomplish, and what do you want to get out of this? Because as much as you want to say business is business, it's not when it comes to being an entrepreneur running your own business. So if you want to be happy, is what you're doing making you happy, then continue to do that. But truly take the time and think about it and understand where you're going and what it is going to take to get there.
Amazing. That's just such a great answer. Thank you so much. And thank you both for coming on today. Mark Maglio, Rebecca Scarberry. Thank you for telling us all about the success story of Becky's Blissful Bakery. And we will sit anxiously awaiting the new brand and where you take it and all the great stuff. Thank you both for giving us so much time today and sharing everything.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
How much fun was that? So we went longer than we normally do, but boy, I just love talking to those two, because we're hopeful that you're going to take something out of this conversation that's going to inspire you as you're thinking about taking your dream to the next level. So let's share a few announcements before we head off to the Quick Trip Networking After Party. If you're not a member of the Idea Collective community, you can get in now for 1 year free, thanks to our friends from Bank 59. Their generous support of the community is helping us do some great big things. Go to bank59.com/ patmiller.com/idea collective, and they'll give you 12 months free in the community. It is a great offer. Also, I'm looking for a few volunteers. Did you hear about the show that I launched, The Pat Miller Show? It's now live. It's a radio show that we're doing on Clubhouse. We're streaming it and podcasting it as well. It's free laser coaching for you as a small business owner. It airs on Tuesday and Thursday at 1 o'clock on Clubhouse. All you need to do is hit patmillershow.com to sign up. And even if you're not on Clubhouse, you can still participate in the show through the magic of computers and interwebs, and we got it figured out. Just go to patmillershow.com, sign up, and you can get some free laser coaching and be a part of this new project that I'm working on that I literally could not be more excited about. A big thank you to Becky and Mark for coming on the show today. A shout out to Jennifer Buchholz, who's producing the call, the ultimate connector in my business, BFF. And of course, thank you to Bank59, Serendipity Labs, and Quick Trip for sponsoring the show. We are off to the Quick Trip after party for networking and connections. If you want to see this show or other shows that we've done, look up our YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Idea Collective, and make sure that you subscribe. I'm Pat Miller, the Idea Coach. Thanks for tuning in. See you next